I've got a pair, I'm happy with it.
Yeah, that's 250.
Right, so how much?
Where have all the Pesachim gone?
I'm 1060 only has yours.
Here they are.
I'm 1350.
Yours.
Oh, wow. Go, Tolly. I've got a plug out for you, Tolly.
Have you? Oh, you're not allowed to plug.
I did it.
Oh, yeah.
It's done. It's within the rules.
3450. Oh, 13.
Tolly, it's within the rules. I can put a link.
We'll leave them on.
Oh, great.
No, not you, wherever they are.
No excuses.
Huh?
I put a plug out for Tolly.
What?
Or some sort of campaign.
I've given him today.
He may or may not be involved in.
I've given him today. Don't worry, I'll get him back for campaigns I get involved with.
Okay, I have to say one small point. I like these things, but I use it much more, if I'm allowed to say, to make the atmosphere fun. But of course, that the Ikka Sipri Tzias Mitzrayim has to be, we want to make it that the children should find Pesach fun, interesting, etc. But you can't make that should be the main focus. So it has to be like in a way to get them to open the mind.
Keep them interested.
Some of it actually I take out even Pesach afternoon.
Right.
Actually, this is the Mokogit Shabbos, but it's important. Okay, we're up to Daf Kuf Tesvav Amud Aleph, 8 lines from the top. And Mom is doing the main halachas of Seder night. So we're up to Omar Ravina. Omar Ravina Omar Liba Mashal Shebei Dav Nosen Hochi Omar Hillel. One of the most confusing things about Hillel, Daf Kuf Tesvav Amud Aleph, about 10 lines from the top, is that Hillel, Rabbi Yehuda and Gamliel, there was about 15 generations where everybody was called either Hillel or Rabbi Yehuda or Gamliel. Because they're all father, son, father, son, father,
It must have
son.
been Sfardi then.
No, because they've been grandfathers. I could agree they were Sfardi, but without being Sfardi. But what happens is, so we say Hillel, which Hillel do we refer to over here? Does anybody know? Okay, I'm very happy you mentioned Hillel HaZaken, because we don't mean Hillel HaZaken. Later we're going to say the same word Hillel, and we do mean Hillel HaZaken. But this time Hillel doesn't mean Hillel HaZaken, and somebody should prove it from the Gemara. When did Hillel HaZaken live? Oh, with the time, right? Middle of the Tanoim, or the beginning of the Tanoim. Who's speaking? Ravina. Ravina was almost the last Tamoira. So you wouldn't have heard anything from Hillel. The Gemara right at the end of Pesachim is going to tell us that matzah nowadays is devaisa more is du'abonon. Mishbo mentioned this many times, and this is something you should have written on your fridge, if not on your fridge, on your wallet. And that is like this: matzah nowadays is devaisa, more is du'abonon. Does anybody know why? Why is matzah devaisa more du'abonon?
The more you meant to eat with.
Very good. More is a mitzvah with Korban Pesach, but we don't have a Korban Pesach. And Shach comes, we'll have it. But if we don't have Korban Pesach, we should now. Therefore, more is D'Rabbanan. But matzah is a separate mitzvah, so matzah is D'Oraisa. Therefore, if you eat matzah more together, one is a mitzvah, one is D'Rabbanan, so you're going to spoil the taste of each other. Says the Gemara, it won't. There's nothing wrong with mixing mitzvahs. How do we do rice with the rice with D'Rabbanan? If you mix it the rice with D'Rabbanan, it's mevatel the rice. Says one man, Tana the Shomas name mitzvahs in Vatel Zuazu. Who's the one who holds the not mevatel? Hillel. Now, which Hillel do we mean now? Now we know Hillel HaZaken. Tanya Omolov and Hillel. And that's what we do. And this, I just made a very short rundown as much as we can. Hillel holds the mitzvah matzah mo is to be eaten together. Together. He used to eat matzah mo and Korban Pesach because he lived in Tanei Samikdosh. You have to eat them together. We hold that it's, we always say in a minute, we don't know whether it's Paskin or not. Because of that, we eat matzah by itself, more by itself, and then we eat matzah and more together. Now, why do we have to bother? Why can't we just eat matzah and more together? And then if there's a mitzvah to eat it together, we've done it. And if there's a mitzvah to eat it separately, so what's the end of the world? It's like eating matzah with salt and anything on matzah with butter. I heard that in Holland, the people used to eat matzah and butter second night Pesach. So what's wrong with eating matzah and more together? What's the answer? Because the taste of the moroi will get rid of the taste of the matzah. Fake tastes that That is a problem because matzah is deraisa, moi is d'rabbanan. So let's eat matzah by itself, and then eat the moi with the matzah because moi is only d'rabbanan, and the matzah is also not sure if it's deraisa. Says this, no, that's also no good because then if you've eaten matzah already, the second matzah could be not a mitzvah at all. It could be just rishus, and then you eat it d'rabbanan with rishus, and then the matzah is ruining the moi. So you've got no choice. You have to eat matzah by itself, moi by itself, and the matzah and moi together. That is the only way to keep it. But because of the fact that, according to most poskim, this halacha is only either a minhag or a din, therefore that is why the shiur of kirich could be more maker than the shiur of matzah. The Shiur says this already. Because matzah is definitely deraisa. So therefore, when you have your matzah, you have to have a bigger portion of your matzah than you have to have of your moi. So let's work this like this. Oh. The fans of Hillel argued with him. The Tanya, you might have thought the mitzvah matzah moi is to eat it all together in one sandwich. Even one by itself and the other one by itself. That means like this. There are two ways to understand the drasha. Either Yechluhu is Lashon Yochid, Lashon Rabim. It's not, it's Lashon Yochid. Yochleim is Lashon Rabim. Yechluhu is Lashon Yochid. Exact translation of Yechlu is eat it. Yochlu, the items be eating. Yochleim is to eat them. Yechlu is Lashon Yochid. Alternatively, the whole word Yochlu is spare. Because you could just say amatzis in roim, and of course you know you should eat it, because when the pasuk starts off, then you should eat the pasuk. So you should eat the korban pesach. The fact that it says amatzis in roim, yochlu, eat it, is the word yochlu is spare. So you have a machlokas, according to Hillel, the mitzvah is how to do mitzvah is matzah moi together. According to the Chacham, the mitzvah is separate. Read the Gemara. Afilu means even if you eat them separate, mashmad alechatchila, you're supposed to eat them together. If that's the case, not really arguing with Hillel. The Tana holds like this. You might have thought you're not yoitza unless you eat them together. So in fact, the Ran says there's actually three shittas over here in the Gemara. One is shittas Hillel, that you only yoitza if you have matzah moi together. If you have it separately, you're not yoitza at all. We have another shitta that makes no difference. You could have them separately, you could have them together, makes a difference. And then third shitta is that you should have them together, but with the ever do yoitza with them separately. Says now that we don't know whether halacha is like Hillel or like the Chachamim. First, you make a bracha l'chilas matzah v'ochim, and you eat matzah. V'od mevorach l'chilas moi, then you make a bracha on the moi v'ochim. V'od ochim matzah v'chasa b'adei adodi b'lei bracha zich l'mikdash kehillah. So nowadays we do matzah first, then moi separately, and then matzah and moi together. Zich l'mikdash kehillah. And the Ma'aseh the Gemara says that you should not eat two things together, one which is deraisa and which is d'rabbanan, because one is mevatel the other. And for that reason, I saw just a couple of days ago, the Vilna Gaon was very makrid not to add salt to his matzah seder night. Do you dip your matzah in salt seder night? No. Because you don't want to lose the taste of the matzah or the mo. Oh, the Gaon did. I saw. The rest of Pesach he did dip it in salt, but not the thing. Anything which you dip into liquid, you need to wash your hands. The background for this is quite complicated. Let's see very, very briefly if you can go through it very like this. Why, when we dip, let's say you want to have an apple, you dip it in water, you have to wash your hands. If you dip your biscuits into coffee, in the olden days I used to be able to eat gluten, I used to enjoy dipping my biscuits into tea. If you do, you have to wash your hands. And this is all chats. We did Kaddish in the Mishnah, Karapas in the Mishnah, but all chats is not as much. Why? Tumah. So let's explain very, very briefly. In the olden days, people would eat tumah all the time, and tumah you have to be Torah for. Min HaTorah, there is no such thing as part of your body being tumah and part of the body being Torah. There's no such thing. It's impossible. The Chachamim decided that the hands of a person who has not been careful the whole day to watch where they have been are tummy. The reason is hands are generally dirty. That's what it says. And truma is something which is very special. Now imagine we wouldn't have made truma on the hands. And Tolly's got so it's well off cutting over here. Shine, sure. How many kind of got? Shalom. Okay. What happens like this? Let's say he's got a bunch of grapes which are truma. And I fondle them a bit and somebody else and etc. Before we finished, the grapes are not nice to eat. They say, I'm not going to eat those grapes. So what they said is that before you touch truma, you have to wash your hands. Right? You have to wash your hands before you touch truma. So it's a very strange truma. It's a truma on only part of the body, and the truma goes away by just washing your hands. And that is why you wash your hands before you eat truma. Now, they made their hands a very low level of tumah. They only made it shnios. It's only a level which is called sheni le tumah. Av rishon sheni, because a rishon makes chunin tumah, and we didn't want to make everything tumah, so we said that all they become is a sheni le tumah, because they only become a sheni le tumah. So if I haven't washed my hands and I touch a slice of bread which is not truma, and I'm some dude's makbid to be told, can I eat that bread? What would you say to me? What would you say? Again, they made their hands into a sheni, not into a rishon, because a rishon can make chunin tamei, a sheni can make truma tamei. So let's say I don't wash my hands, and I touch a slice of bread of chunin. Is that bread tamei or not? No, it's okay. It's absolutely fine. It's not truma. They made their hands only a sheni. Why didn't they make their hands into a rishon? It's very, very clear. Why didn't they make their hands a rishon? Why didn't they make the hands into a rishon? Because everything would become tummy. It'd be impossible. Every time you'd have a piece of cake, your cake would become tummy. So the hands are only a shady, which is why if you eat an apple, you don't need to wash your hands. Now, there's another Gemara, we had this beginning of Shabbos, that anything which is a sheni makes a liquid into a rishon, a very special tumah. The reason is because liquids are highly susceptible to tumah, trying to use posh words, not managing, are highly susceptible to tumah. Why are they highly susceptible to tumah? In one way, are liquids very highly susceptible to tumah, which are not by foods. Food, you need to be machshir. Liquid, you don't need to be machshir. So because of this, they said everything which is a sheni, if it touches liquid, it becomes a rishon. So because of that, if you touch a glass of water, if you touch a cup of water, put your finger into water, your hand, the water becomes a rishon. Now, normally speaking, a person doesn't touch liquid. What you do is you pour yourself a drink and you drink from the cup. And the mouth is not tummy, it's only the hands. When is the time that you touch liquids? When you're having a coffee, you're dipping your coffee biscuits into the coffee. So because of that, they said that every time you dip something into liquids, you have to wash your hands. It's quite a complicated gezeil. It started off, they didn't want the tumah to become dirty. And therefore they made hands shnios, not rishon, because we don't want liquid. Once they're shnios, they make liquids into rishon, but only liquids. When you touch liquids, therefore if you dip into something, you have to. And that is, by the way, the reason why we wash our hands before we eat bread. The Rishonim over here differ slightly in that exact nuance of how they made the gezeil. Either we want Kohanim to get so used to the idea that they wash their hands before they eat truma. They established that whenever they eat bread, because most truma was grain, was naturally grain on one thing. So therefore, once they established it for Kohanim, they established it for Yisroel. Or alternatively, that they wanted the Yidden not to touch Kodesh, but truma, and therefore was a gzeil onto the Yidden directly. Okay. Says the Gemara, if you dip your hands into liquids, you have to wash your hands. Omar Papa. You should remember this halacha. Why? Lots of people have got no idea why if you dip something into liquid. Omar Papa, Shema mino haychasa, this lettuce, tzorich l'shikui b'chavoises v'shum kafa. That you have to dip it all the way into the chavoises in order to get rid of either the poison or the snakes. Lettuce is highly infested with snakes, and it's dangerous to eat snakes. Alternatively, it's got like a poison, it's got a sharpness. We're showing you two explanations. So you have to dip it properly into the liquid in order, and that is why you have to wash your hands. Why do you have to wash your hands? So the verse is like this. When you dip it, you have to dip it properly, because if you did not dip it properly, why in the world do we have to wash our hands? I just said a very, very brief idea of Pinkas, a very sweet idea. Is like this, that Seder night we say Kaddish or Chatz, we wash our hands. The truth of the matter is we do it every single night, every night of the year. If you ever dip potatoes in salt water, you have to wash your hands. So why suddenly Seder night to make a whole or Chatz and all the children learn about it? He says if you've got 3-year-old that walks or 5-year-old that walks, you don't talk about it every day. But the first time your child takes a step, call your parents, your grandparents, and everybody needs to know about it. It's the first time. Saying that we came out of Mitzrayim, it's the birth of Klal Yisrael, it's the renewal of Klal Yisrael. Since that is the case, therefore, we'll make a big fuss out of it. Okay. Says the Gebor, maybe you don't need to dip it in. The poison, meaning that the sharpness or the snakes, you don't need to dip them completely in the charosis. They die already just from the smell of the charosis. Oh, so why do you have to wash your hands? Because perhaps you'll come to dip it in case you might dip it in. Okay, so let's explain a little bit. And this is how we pass them. You do not need to dip your moroi completely into charosis. It's enough to dip it partly. So why do we wash our hands? In case you dip it completely. Now, really, we're talking about two complicated things, because really we wash our hands for karpas. For moroi, when we dip into charosis, do we wash our hands? We rely on the rochza, which we anyway washed our hands for moitzi matzah. So the Rishonim explain, it is a kind of liquid. You're supposed to add wine. It's cast as a liquid. So for the reason we wash our hands by karpas is because we want that it should be a what's the word for it? We want that it should be no. So a person might get confused between the karpas and the charosis. So whatever halachas we use for one, we use for both. So we wash our hands for karpas with the same principles that wash our hands for charosis. Lemaisa, this is important halacha. You have to dip into charosis. You don't need to dip all of it, but the reason we wash our hands is because you may come to dip all of it. It says, well, you shouldn't leave the more in the charosis. A person should make sure that he shouldn't leave the more in the charosis because you will lose the taste of more. And that's what the Shiur says. That after you dip it in the charosis, what should you do? Shake it off. You have to shake it off because you don't want too much charosis on it because get rid of the taste of more. It says, Rav Chisda led Mechabed of Ukva to speak B'Dosh. Not al yod of a tibul rishon. If you wash your hands by rochatz, not al yod of a tibul sheni, then you have to wash again by rochza. Right? We wash twice, say the night by rochatz and rochza. Papa. He said, he said he meant generally speaking that if you dip your hands once, let's say you dip in a general, let's say you have an appetizer before a meal, and then later you have your meal, then you should wash your hands, generally speaking, but not say the night. If it's about Seder night, the Gemara in the Havin understands that there's no reason in the world to wash between rochza. Why? Because you washed orchatz, and all you've been doing between orchatz and rochza, hopefully, is speaking about Seder night. So therefore, it should be a matzav of. So why should you have to wash twice? Says why normally? When generally in a year does a person dip and then afterwards dip again and wash again? Why is it necessary? It must be talking about Seder night when there's a chiyuv. And so why do you have to wash twice? A person might have thought and he might be mesiach das and touch somewhere. So therefore a person should wash for rochza. I saw now God of Rabbi is a problem like this. It's actually a real problem. Because let's say a person doesn't have a lot of little children. A person has a quiet, calm seder, washes for chatz, and he knows that you don't wash your hands. For example, if you wash your hands before you go to a shiur and you go straight to mincha, so you're always supposed to wash your hands before every tefillah. The Shiur says you have to wash your hands. If you just wash your hands and all you've done is learn for 5 minutes, you don't wash your hands again. So over here, if you've done all chatz, what about rochza? Why would you wash for rochza? So we actually had a minhag to go for the bathroom. Well, number one, just before rochza, in order to avoid this problem, to make sure he has to wash his hands. Otherwise, you can't make a bracha by the rochza. See, most people don't have it. If you've got a child, suddenly he's wiping, what? You don't, but you can't make a bracha on mochza if you haven't touched something in between. So most people, if you've had to come off the table 3-4 times, that's right. If you scratched your hair, etc. If you've had a very calm seder, and your hands, you've been concentrating on certain thing. It's actually, sometimes I feel, because we're busy with these toys, it is a pity not to make the Seder also a certain movement to command. So it should be a certain, it's a very hard balance to create a happy atmosphere. Yes, there has to be a certain amount of Yiro. You don't want it to be, the worst thing is to talk about other things and everything else. It has to be a roimim Mr. Kamatsav, and therefore, okay, so he used to go to the bathroom just before Ochzor. So think, I've seen actually this brought down a few points from this idea. Okay. Omarova, bola matzah yotza. If a person swallowed the matzah without chewing it, it's yotza. Bola mora. If you swallow the mora, lo yotza, you're not yotza. Since I'm mentioning Ulasha, I'll just tell you a very interesting halacha. Mishmur discusses it with Ulasha. Is very machmir about this. If you look carefully in my measures, one day maybe I should give a proper shit just on the measures. You know, many times you eat matzah, what happens? Crumbs get stuck in your teeth. It's almost impossible not. But Ulasha paskins that the crumbs in your teeth are not part of the kazais. It's only what you swallow is part of the kazais. And in fact, that's why if you look at my measures, I've added 1 or 2 grams because of it. And in fact, the Ulasha says, which is very interesting, because the Ulasha, we should know, was very, very particular about cleanliness. I was told me that one of the things they said about him, they used to like, you didn't used to see him like scratching his hair or rubbing his face or something. He was very, very, very careful. But what happens is, Seder night he says you should put your finger in your mouth and gather what you can and eat it. And it's brought down in many forms. That's when you're chewing anyway, doing something not everybody can see you. And what's the word for it? You should put your finger in your mouth. And he says you have to, because what you don't swallow is not part of your gazais matzah. You should condition boil into it. What?
Just eat more matzah then.
Yeah, you can eat more matzah, but it's easier usually to get. Okay, eat more matzah.
You've got half of a square in your.
No, it's not that much. But okay, again, so bola matzah yotza bola mola yotza. Why not yotza if you swallow more?
It's not achila.
Oh no, you haven't tasted the bitterness. You haven't tasted the bitterness. This is achila, but you haven't tasted the bitterness. Bola matzah more. If you swallow them both, you do matzah yotza, you do mola yotza. Kolchon besiv. If you swallow them besiv, that means you swallow them up, wrapped up in a leaf. Or bolon afide matzah namelo yotza. That's not considered achila, and therefore not yotza. When Meister Mishpam paskins that a person has to lechatchila should chew the matzah in order to taste the matzah. So you should lechatchila chew the matzah. If you don't, it's not the end of the Lord. By moroi, you have to chew. The Shmuel says that you should chew and chew and chew the moroi in order to get the taste of the moroi in your mouth. Right? You have to chew the moroi. You chew it. One other halacha, when they talk about some of these halachas, the Shmuel mentions is that those who hold that you should swallow the matzah bit by bit, but you should chew in your mouth. When you got very hot in your mouth, then swallow it down in one go. That's extra chumrah. You ever seen it being done?
Try and get the kazais in one mouth.
That's right, yeah. Because in that way, it's a shorter time of the swallowing.
And then they need a second point.
I tell you, a very interesting thing is that there's a sefer came out called Kris Eliyov. I haven't got the sefer. Can't buy every sefer, I wish I could. It's a sefer that came out with Falk's halachas. And it says they're very, very interesting. I'm always fascinated because it's a shayla that comes up all the time. How quickly do you have to drink your vis wine, Seder night, or if you want to drink during the week, if you want to make bonus washes? It says that, as I tell you this one, somebody showed me that when Falk was younger, he used to say 5 seconds. He got older, 15 seconds. And 2 years before he was nifta, he said he's watched people, it's 30 seconds. It's a very, very long time to drink your glass of wine. I've always, till now, been makbid in drinking it in 2 seconds. Well, how long do you take to drink by your wine?
No, wine's a lot nicer.
It depends on how you enjoy the wine.
Probably about
10 seconds.
I was always very makbid, because if you look at Mishmur, it says 2 sips. Wine, well, just drink it down. Chugging it, that's it. But it's very interesting.
Start using some easier wines.
So what who brought it out is from Falk's Talmidim, Katanka, and who was the other person who brought it out? Who's the one who brought out Kris Eliyov, Katanka, and something else? The Talmidim and Gates said, my brother and Gates bring out to Falk's farm. I said, it's very, very strange that he should like start changing his mind like that. He said, no. He looked and he noticed that people taking longer about drinking.
He was or everyone else was?
What?
Him personally was taking longer or
No, other people were taking longer.
How did he like?
What?
You can't drink like they used to in the old days.
Oh, Omar Shimi Barashi, Matz lifnei kol echad ve'echad, Mor lifnei kol echad ve'echad, v'chavosis lifnei kol echad ve'echad. You should put matzah and the mor and the chavosis in front of every person. Then oikedes hashulchan and lifnei mishomer ha'goda. There's a time before manishtani, you take away the table, you bring it back. You only have to do it before the person who's saying the Haggadah. That's the father or the one who's running the Seder, the grandfather, whatever it may be. But every single person has to have a matzah more in front of them. Why is that? So Tosa says the reason is not to make a break. And this is a big problem. This is one of the advantages that I have by weighing it all is before the Seder, I give everybody all the shoy matzah. And then what I do is I break a tiny bit of matzah from the top and the middle to give everybody. It shouldn't take so long. And those people that start working it out on the sheet, Shalom, I'm making you trouble. Then what happens is, you give it out, it's going to be a long break. Maisa, we don't pass like this, by the way. We pass, you don't need to have matzah more in front of everybody. But the Maisa, the reason to have it, look at that very short thesis, third thesis, then time with the sheet, to take it for Bochum, yeah, this is Bochum, the Shem Chiv, Shabbos, 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 take it for Bochum. Okay. You only need to put in front of the one who says Haggadah. Why do you uproot the table? The children should notice that it's being taken away, and they'll ask a question, and they'll say, "What's going on? Why are we doing it?" He saw that he was taking the table away. We haven't yet eaten, you're taking the kara away. We do not need to say the manishtano. Now, this is a very big problem. What does it mean you don't have to say the manishtano? So the Rashbam holds that the manishtano was only instituted for those that have no ability to ask their own questions. But really, you don't need the manishtano. The man gets very upset with him because Ma'aseh Sams are going to learn a mission that the mitzvah is the manishtano. So he means to say, the man says that of course you mechuyev to say the manishtano. But Abaya straight away, when he asked the question, why are we taking away the ka'ora? What he has done is, he then immediately continued with how he added more questions about Ishtana. Means it wasn't that he only asked him that and that's it. So let's put out one small point. And Mishmordi says this a little bit, that what we do is like this. We have a ka'or plate, so most people have a ka'or plate. And that is what they take off the table. The problem is, most children do not look at the ka'or plate as their meal. They're hoping to get their chicken soup or the kanedilach, which they're hoping to get by Shulchan Aruch. So they don't have the question, why are we taking everything off the table? The truth is, then they don't have the question because they learned it all in school. So what you have to do is, you have to take off the table other things. Like what you have to do is, you have to make a matzav and say, okay, let's take everything off the table now, and make it as if they should start questioning why it is. Okay. Why is it called lechem oini? Lechem she'ini olav dvorim, a lechem which we say about it many, many things. Because we speak about it. The fact is, there's a mitzvah to reveal the matzahs. When you say the Haggadah, you should have the matzah in front of you. And the Chatchil of Yisroel says it should be the middle matzah, the broken middle matzah. A lechem which you say on it many words. It's a poor man. Just like a poor man has a small piece. Also a small piece. And my grandfather used to say, lechem oini, by the time you finish paying for it, you become a poor person. The more than say that, the Beis, the word says lechem oini, two explanations: a piece or say dovach. Just like a poor man, he bakes it. He heats up the oven. The wife bakes. So over here it's very, very interesting. You've got the halach of the Rashbam, and this is the first time I heard the Rabbi Chananel. I don't think I've ever seen it before. It's a special schus before Pesach to hear this Rabbi Chananel. The Gemara says like this: poor people, one person lights the oven, the husband, and the wife bakes. Why? A rich person turns on the oven. When he's ready to put the chal in the oven or whatever it is, he puts it on. But some dude's very, very worried about gas, he chooses it in. He's got shortage of firewood. What does he do? He gets everything ready, And then the second that it is ready, he puts on the fire and he does it because he doesn't want to waste firewood, right? Sometimes a fire, and children leave a light on. They say, why are you leaving the light on? They're rich, they've got to leave the light on because in half an hour they're going to play in the rooms, put the light on, put the oven on, etc. But if a person wants to be careful, what you do is you only heat up the oven when you're about to put it in. And that says the Rashbam. That's the same thing with matzah. With matzah, you don't make the dough and half an hour later put it in the oven because it will become chametz. You rush. So according to this, the comparison of a poor person is what? The rushing. A poor man rushes because he's short of firewood. On Pesach we rush. It shouldn't be chametz. We've got 3 explanations so far why it's called lechem oni. You say about it a lot of things. Or you eat a small piece like a poor man, or because you're rushing. Ben Yochanan says a different pshat. Ben Yochanan says that a wealthy person, he doesn't bake his own bread. He goes to Yehuda's shop and he orders bread. That's what wealthy people do. But a poor man, he's not going to pay somebody else to bake his bread. He can't afford to. So what does he do? He bakes it himself. Him and his wife, they all get involved. They've got no ability to pay other people to bake their bread. Says Rabbi Yochanan with a matzah, you're supposed to bake it yourself. And every person should be involved in the baking of the matzah. And much to my disappointment, I've only once in my life baked matzahs, and even then I never ate those matzahs because they weren't gluten-free. And the matzah, I don't do it. But if you have, no, I did once a kid safe, and it's yeah, but I don't do it. And if I really talk about the topic, I was I like to read the Siddur Shiur Avodah. It's unbelievable safe matzah. Shiva once told one of his grandchildren that every day of his life he reads one Mishnah. Lili Nishmas, they said the Shiur Avodah, Alexander Ziskin wrote it, to thank him for writing such an amazing sefer that gave him so much chizuk. Can you imagine such a thing? So he said to me, for your father, you only say Mishnah once a year on his outside. So I felt more closer. Unbelievable. It's a very strange story. Raisa, every single day of his life, it's unbelievable safe. If you read the sefer Shiur Avodah, you'll get tremendous chizuk. It's very good. But there he writes, I go through it, he writes that unbelievable thing on this mamish, that every person should make his own matzahs, honestly. And you should do it every Pesach in the afternoon. And you guys, the whole Musad Rosh of those lazy people that they go and get matzahs weeks before Pesach. Why you think it's a mitzvah? You should do it every Pesach in the afternoon.
But nowadays you found that you've run out.
Because there's no one's got any left by about now, 2 weeks ago.
No, you should bake it yourself. Bake it yourself.
Take it with the mats. Take it over.
Bake it
My
over.
kitchen is still
Ben
coming.
might have to this year. Don't know the master.
Should we carry on and do a bit more? Let's get to the Mishnah. Right. Says the Api Shechalis's mitzvah, it will be allowed mitzvah. If it's not a mitzvah, it's Shumai Maislo. If Chalis is not mitzvah, why do you bring it? I'm about Shum Kofa because of the poison. Omar Avasi Kapat Chasa, the poison of the Moroi Chamo. Is radish. Kapata Chama, the poison of radish, because it's also sharp. Kalsi, it is beets. Kapata Kalsi, beets, Chamimi, you should have hot water. Kapata Kulu Chamimi. If you ever have anything which is no good for you, what should you drink? Hot water. Chamimi, hot water. That's why I drink a lot of hot water. Hot water, the Gemara says, is a medication for any kind of unhealthy food. If you drink too much of anything, drink hot water. That's what it says. Right? Oh, if a person, let's say a person ate some lettuce, but he's got no hot water, or radish got no water, beets got no hot water. What should he do? Name a hochi. He should say the following charm: Kappa de kappa, poison, I remember you, or the shave no sechon, your 7 daughters, or tamini kalo sechon, 8 daughters-in-law. Now, Rashbam says it's got no meaning, it's just a way to threaten the poison, and he keeps it at bay. The Gemara in Brachos actually says the same kind of charm for another kind of thing. I remember you, your 7 daughters and 8 daughters, and all keeps them away. We had apples. Why do we have apples? In Mitzrayim, what happened was, Rashi mentioned it in Ashtut's Parsha, that the Yidden were too tired and exhausted, possibly to be with the wives, and the wives would come out to the fields and give them food and drink and wash them, and they would interact them, and they would have children in the fields, literally. And what happened was, there was a special nest that the children were born and they were safe, and the Galus of Klal saw that they kept going. The amazing thing that Klal saw straight away after the Holocaust produced families, even though that's been so much, even in the Holocaust. And that's one thing that Tachas Tapuach, to remember the schus of the apple. It's a memory of the cement, because it looks like cement. You should do both. You should have apples and make it thick. It's a smoke zechelet. It should be thick zechelet and apple zechelet tapuach. We should be actually fascinating enough so you don't have to actually put apples inside it altogether. You just have to put in things which taste like apples. For example, dates or cinnamon and things like that, which taste like apples. But we actually do put apples in. Yes. We just said right. But
afterwards you can eat it. Yeah, afterwards.
I don't understand the question. I'm sorry. No.
Supposed to scoop or just dip?
You dip and then you shake it off and you eat it.
The rest of the meal.
Yeah. But we bring it onto the table, zechelet tapach, zechelet tit. Tadik was a bichel and tavlin zechelet teven, chavis zechelet tit. Oh, I was about so the kach Yomi tagri chauch, the tagorim they used to sell from the windows. Charakim is windows. Mashkiach in the charakim. Shmishnaim boy tzlu lechem tavlin the mitzvah. Take the spice of the mitzvah. You're supposed to put cinnamon inside it because cinnamon looks a little bit like straw and it reminds you also of the straw which they had to use to build the bricks. We're up to the Manishtano tomorrow, so you can all do it.
Bring your children with.
Bring your children. Very nice. Okay, it's fast. The only thing is the shkocha protis. I never knew about this, about Oni.